House of EdTech, Episode 11.
Hi, everybody. My name is Karina Gonzalez. I'm a high school library media specialist, and I love listening to House of EdTech.
This episode of House of EdTech is brought to you by Audible.com. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Christopher Nessie. The House of EdTech podcast explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. My objectives include discussing technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and sharing information that you can hear about today and use tomorrow by talking to teachers, leaders, and creators like you and having them share their stories. Because whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way we teach and how our students learn. And welcome back to another episode of the House of EdTech. This is going to be a fantastic episode. I have a lot of great content that I'd like to share with you, and I will share it with you. Coming up, my featured content includes an interview with Matthew Blackman. He's a physics teacher in northern New Jersey, and he uses technology in the classroom, of course, and his special twist is he is also into gaming in the classroom. I also have my EdTech Thought, the EdTech Recommendation, and, of course, another House of EdTech VIP. But before I get to all of that, I do want to send out congratulations to Natalie O'Neill. If you recall, Natalie was on the last episode of the podcast, and she was recently selected to attend Google's Teacher Academy. Natalie will be traveling to Mountain View, Google's headquarters, on July 30th and 31st. The Google Teacher Academy is awesome. It's a free professional development experience that's designed to help primary and secondary educators from around the globe get the most out of innovative technologies. Each GTA is an intense 2-day event during which the participants get hands-on experience with Google tools, learn more about innovative instructional strategies, and they receive resources to share with colleagues, and they immerse themselves in a supportive community of educators making an impact. And I've already reached out to Natalie, and she is going to be back on the podcast sometime after her trip to California to share what she's learned from Google. So look forward to that episode this summer. And one more announcement before I get to the featured content. I'd like to recognize my sponsor, Audible.com. As one of the House of EdTech listeners, you can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial of Audible.com. Audible is an Amazon company that has over 150,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or other MP3 player. Just head over to audibletrial.com/House of EdTech, and your support will help me to do some more great things with the program, and it doesn't cost you anything and will help me out a ton. Now, let's get over to this episode's featured content. And now for this episode's featured content, I'd like to welcome and introduce everybody to Matthew Blackman. Matt Blackman is a physics teacher and game designer from Madison High School in northern New Jersey. At Madison, he teaches AP Physics. His education includes a bachelor's in physics, as well as a master's in physics education, both from Rutgers University. He is also the founder of the educational technology company, The Universe and More, where he creates innovative physics-based games for the world and his students. Mr. Blackman has been previously recognized for his accomplishments as well. In 2012, he was formally recognized by the New Jersey State Legislature for his accomplishments and contributions to the New Jersey community. Welcome to the House of EdTech, Mr. Matt Blackman.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
I am so glad that you are taking the time to be on the podcast with me. We recently got connected through Twitter, and once I saw all the awesome things you're doing in your classroom and with the game design, I knew I had to have you on, so I appreciate you taking the time to be with me.
It's my pleasure.
All right. So let's introduce you to the world as I know it. How did you become interested in education? How long have you been teaching?
Well, I'm about to finish up my 5th year teaching at Madison High School. I love Madison, and still loving teaching same amount that I did from day one. And I think the way I first got into teaching was through physics. I really always loved physics since high school. And when I started to learn more about it in college, I found that I just couldn't stop talking about it, and I couldn't stop explaining the things that I learned to my family over the dinner table or to my friends. And just the love for physics, I think, led me to teaching. And through a passion for physics and a passion for coming up with creative ways to help students understand physics, I never looked back, and I love teaching ever since.
I too also have a passion for physics. It was my favorite science in high school. That's as far as I took it. I did enjoy the labs. I took one physics course in college, but then I decided social studies was it for me. But I do like science, and physics was my favorite science.
Well, absolutely understandable. I think physics is the first place where students can really visualize the stuff they're learning about and get hands-on with the content.
Absolutely, and unlike chemistry, you can't get too physically harmed in physics.
Oh, you'd be surprised what we can do with bowling pins.
As an EdTech enthusiast, what are some of the ways that you currently use technology with your students? For example, what are some Web 2.0 tools, software, websites, etc.? What do you like to do with technology in your classroom?
Absolutely. Well, every day in my class, I have anywhere from 5 to 10 tabs open, ready to go. And based on whatever pops up during the lesson or a question that a student has, I try to always have something ready for them. And some of them might be YouTube videos, some of them might be simulations, whether they be PhET simulations or simulations that I made for the lesson. And sometimes they're just articles and things that relate the material to something modern that's happening in physics. So I like to call my class a multimedia extravaganza. Throughout a lesson, you can see anywhere from 5 to 10 different web resources that I use interchangeably. And so in terms of specifics for YouTube, I love to use predict the outcome videos, where they have some sort of elaborate setup that embodies some cool topic in physics, and the students are asked to use what they learned to predict what's going to happen when someone does something. And the discussions, I think, that those types of videos spurn in the classroom are memorable, and they really get students thinking like scientists. So for YouTube, I love to use predict the outcome videos, and also crazy demonstrations and things that I would probably lose my job if I started setting up in the classroom explosions and pandemonium physics style. I also like to use simulations. So PhET simulations have been instrumental for a class discussion resource, and also as a student group activity or individual at-home activity.
Now, as a layman, someone who's not a scientist, can you just quickly, just for my own edification, what is a PhET simulation?
Well, the University of Colorado Boulder started a couple years back a movement to enable teachers to use online simulations to do things that would otherwise require a pretty arduous amount of legwork and sometimes expensive equipment. So they've since really spanned a vast array in physics, chemistry, biology on simulations and cool little snippets to help enhance your teaching and help your students visualize things a lot better.
So these would be like the physics versions of like the virtual frog dissection if I was a biology student?
Yes, absolutely, although I'm glad my teacher went with the real thing on that one.
Okay. I do recall, and I also enjoyed the real thing as well. What are some technologies that your students are using to learn physics in your classroom?
They're all over YouTube. They very often will come in the next day with a video that they found that relates to that topic, and they're constantly helping each other on the class website and really taking advantage of that. And I think that my students use technology very often to kind of show that they're engaged in the material and that they're taking it to the next step in independently seeking out further resources.
Now, with YouTube being the vast resource that it is, you mentioned that you can go watch experiments that have been done that don't require you to spend the money or your school district, which is a great resource saver. Have you incorporated video into your class in terms of filming your own labs or getting the kids involved in doing that kind of thing?
Well, it's funny. I recently bought a pin art. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those things where you stick your hand on the pins and it shows the shape of your hand and it gives you this mild tingling feeling. I got one of those on a turntable and asked my students to predict how the pins would look after giving the turntable a good spin. And they went into small groups and discussion about inertia and Newton's second law of friction. And I'm really thinking about filming that one up and putting it out there in case other physics teachers don't feel like mounting a pin art onto a turntable. So I'm trying to make my own predict the outcome experiments and maybe compiling them onto YouTube for anyone to see.
I think that's a great idea. I just came across it in the last episode. I mentioned my recommendation was for Adventure. It's a website that allows you to create your own, almost like choose your own adventure videos. And the example on their website has John Legend singing his current hit, and he plays the chord or the background to it. And then you have to click on the video to choose which note to play. And if you play the right note, the video goes to the next right note. Or it's him saying, you clicked the wrong note, try again. So I could see that being a great website, either science teachers using or having the kids using to make their own, with the choose your own adventure model, but it's, predict the outcome and can you guess which way it's going to go?
Absolutely. I think YouTube, with its new built-in things like that, can now take what used to be a passive experience, like watching a video, and really turn it into an active experience, where based on what students predict, you can get a better idea of how they're going through the physics in their head and address that particular line of thought directly.
And as if science wasn't fun enough, now it can be even more interactive than just doing the labs.
Absolutely.
You're also interested in integrating games into your classroom. What led to introducing gaming into the physics classroom for you?
I think games are perfect for physics, and they're perfect for learning science. They incorporate positive reinforcement. They allow students to see and manipulate what's going on the screen in front of them, and they're fun. And I think when you combine those three, you get this tool that can really reach a lot of students on a really global scale. Whereas before, if they didn't have maybe the motion detectors to do the activity that I'm lucky enough to have in my classroom with motion detectors, they can go online and they can play a game that involves motion and plotting it without having to set up the motion detector. And I think when you take that and you combine it with the constant stimulus of having something fun going on and some goal that you have to use physics to achieve, I think the response that it brings out of the students is very powerful.
I can do nothing but agree with you. Tell us about your entrepreneurial venture, the universeandmore.com.
Yeah, I started about 4 years ago now. The first summer after a year of teaching, I decided to start learning how to code, and I fell in love with coding from day one. I mean, the idea of manipulating through computer language what you see on a screen is just really fascinating to me, and I decided why not combine that with my teaching and make my own stuff. When it started out, it was just simulations, little visuals to enhance the lesson, and then they started to get more and more interactive until over a couple of years now of doing this and learning more every summer, I've transitioned it into what I think is a very useful resource for teachers everywhere.
I have to agree with you. I have been to the universeandmore.com. How many games do you have up currently?
There's 3. 2 are full games. One is an applet simulation about waves, and I'm now moving towards making iPad and Android apps for both devices starting this summer.
Matt, can you talk a little bit about how your students have responded to gaming in the classroom? I know that gaming is a relatively new trend in education, and the high school students you work with may not have had that in elementary or middle school. So how do they like games in the classroom and in science?
They love it. if you assign one for homework, they all come in the next day talking about it. They all do it, and they come in really sharing ideas, sharing what they experienced or little tricks that they learned. And I think the response from my students and for students all over is that games can be used effectively all through middle school and all through high school. I don't think students outgrow them if the games are designed appropriately.
I know, obviously, as a game designer, you haven't outgrown games. I still like to sit down at the PlayStation every now and then, so I am definitely still a fan of gaming. But there's a difference for your students. Eventually, at some point, you say to them, hey, I designed the game I assigned you for homework, or this is my website and I designed the games. What's their reaction when you tell them that?
At first, some of them don't really believe me until they check out the copyright on there. But they get really excited about that. I have a couple students who have started learning how to code and started making their own games for, first it was the calculator, and then they moved to making games for their phones. And a lot of them like to give suggestions, whether it's, little things, they want to give their character a hat, or more substantive suggestions. The students being right there has proven to be instrumental as a designer of educational games. I'm extremely happy that I stayed in teaching because it brings me right there into the shoes of the teachers who I'm hoping will end up using these games to help their students learn. So having my students there and them having me there is a positive experience for everyone.
How can it not be? You're killing two birds with one stone. You're not only do you teach them science, but you're also getting some of them hooked on getting interested in programming and computing, and that can set them up for all sorts of opportunities, especially in the world we live in today. So yeah,
I tell them you can control computers. You can make a whole world where anything is possible.
Nice. Now, with the universe and more, you have the number of games you have right now. What is there anything you're currently working on? Anything you can maybe give us a little inside information on?
I'm working on the iPad and Android version of the graphing game, which is going to be called Action Graphing. It's coming out for iPad in time for next school year. There's going to be a free version and upgrade version for $2.99, and it's going to be a majorly improved version of what you can see on the website now. And I'm excited to see how people respond to the improvements that were made.
And the games, they are multi-platform, so they can use them on iOS or Android devices?
Yeah, iOS, Android. I'm keeping everything that's on the website up there for free, but the apps are going to enable teachers to have their students do a lot that they really can only do by taking advantage of the touch screen and the ability to have them move their hands and control the character in a more direct way to help them understand how these graphs work.
Now, in addition to the games that you create, can you recommend any other resources for games that can be used in the science classroom? Or how would you recommend for maybe the science teacher who has an interest like yourself to maybe get started in designing their own games? And I'm sorry, that's a really long question.
I think there's a distinct absence in the number of fun and engaging physics games that are out there that really teach physics. Most of the time what you'll get is either a quiz app that has little mini games that you can play if you answer the questions right, or something that's a game, and if you beat the level, then it gives you some quiz pop question. And I think both of those fall short when students are constantly playing games on their phones that are a lot more fun than that and a lot more engaging. So I think one of the things that a game has to do is build the physics into the design of the game itself, instead of having the physics sort of hang in there off the side. So I think that's one of the things that I try to do when I design games, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of that out there for my students.
I definitely have to agree, because I've played all the games that are on the site. There's definitely, and I've played Angry Birds and, Cut the Rope and all that. There's a distinct difference, and I think it's for the positive that when you play your games, you know that, yes, you're playing a game, but it is clear that you are also there to learn something. And I think there is great value in that.
Absolutely, and I think there can be a good balance where you can have students having fun,
Be careful, Mr. Blackman. You started to mention things like having fun in school. I don't know. To get back to that really long question, the second part, just so I know what I'm talking about. How can teachers who are interested in gaming or creating their own games, what's a good place for them to get started if they have any interest in that?
They could start with Flash. It's easy to start. It's a lot of fun. You can get immediate results so that you stay motivated. It's
one thing for you to say, to get started in Flash. I've dabbled in it a little bit. I think it might be beneficial if we just let people reach out to you as somebody who's, in the trenches and a game designer. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to connect and start to ask and pick your brain about this stuff?
At theuniverseandmore.com, Matt at theuniverseandmore.com. And I'm teaching. I'm always open to talk to teachers and share ideas, hear what they have to say, with experiences with the games or ideas for new games or changes. Anything that you want to talk about, I'm always available.
Fantastic. And can I also sign up to maybe get free access to beta test your games if you need?
You got it.
All right. Matt Blackman, I want to thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us today about physics and games. Thank you for taking the time to be on the House of EdTech.
Pleasure talking to you, Chris.
And now for this episode's EdTech Thought. This is kind of like a twofer, as I'm going to talk briefly and in detail at the same time about two interesting and important topics to me. And hopefully you'll find them interesting too. First, I do want to say that I completed my master's degree, and on May 18th, I graduated with my master's in curriculum design and instruction from Caldwell University. Caldwell will officially become a university on July 1st of this year. So congratulations to Caldwell and all the people over there who made this change possible. I've always had a desire to work in education, and the experience at Caldwell allowed me to do that. Caldwell afforded me the opportunity to get my teacher certification through their post-bac program, which then allowed me to pursue my master's. So I just wanted to thank Dr. Walter Smoleski, Dr. C, from Caldwell, who's the post-bac program coordinator, who has been a mentor, a friend, and a colleague over the last few years since I started at Caldwell. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Joanne Jasmine. Oddly, I've never met Dr. Jasmine, who was my advisor the whole time I was at Caldwell, but she was always available via email and always had an answer and solution to my questions when I reached out to her. And finally, from Caldwell, I do want to thank Dr. Elena Chernobilski. She was my thesis advisor and also the teacher I had for, I think, 4 or 5 classes. I didn't pull up my transcript. And I just wanted to thank Dr. Chernobilski for all her help and support throughout my thesis process and also during the classes I took with her in the last couple years. My experience at Caldwell was unlike anything I ever experienced in education, and without my experience, I would not be sitting here today teaching, doing what I love, and even doing this podcast right now. So thank you, Caldwell. Thank you, Dr. C, Dr. Jasmine, and Dr. Chernobilski. The second part of my EdTech Thought is also relevant, and it's based on the first part. The key word is priorities. You see, after graduating from Caldwell, I came home and I was very focused on participating in a live broadcast of the Tech Educator podcast over on Jeff Bradbury's teachercast.net. I've been on the program a couple of times in the last month, and really this school year, I've really exploded and jumped into expanding my PLN and becoming more connected and reaching out to people about education and EdTech. It's one of the reasons I started this podcast and you're listening to me right now. But I'm not just somebody who is all about EdTech all the time. The 3 words that sum me up are husband, father, and educator. And they're in that order for a reason. And of late, I've been slipping. My priorities are not aligned and where they're supposed to be. I still slip up. I began slipping recently as a result of just doing this podcast over the last 22 weeks, as this is episode 11. And there are other projects I'm interested in and that I've become involved with in the last month or two. As much as I love teaching and I love technology, ultimately, The important things in my life are my family and the moments I share with them. There is no website or web tool that is cooler or more hip or exciting than my wife. There is no app or conference more important than my son Miles. Miles is a 2-year-old with so much energy, and a day with him teaches me so much more than any workshop on Google or Smartboard that I could ever attend, even if the conference is free. So I ask you, what are your priorities as an educator? How do you balance your commitments to all the areas of your life? Have you ever upset someone you care about because of your commitments to education and education technology? I'd love to know. So please reach out through the different feedback outlets, whether it's email or Twitter or leaving a voicemail. Get all that information at the end of the episode, and I want to hear your thoughts. If you have any tips to how you manage all the pieces of your life's pie, let me know. I'd love to gather them up, put them together, and share them, because I think that would make a great future episode about priorities and how we divide our time and attention as educators. That's my EdTech Thought. And now it's time for this episode's EdTech Recommendation. And based on the theme of my EdTech Thought, I'd like to recommend TED.com. An article I read this week was titled 10 Inspiring TED Talks That Will Completely Refresh Your Perspective on Life. And this was a top 10 list that was assembled by Anna Chui, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, and she posted this on lifehack.org. There'll be a link in the show notes, as there are videos posted, and this is an audio podcast. So to quote the article, we need someone to motivate us at some points in our lives. These 10 people have delivered some of the most inspiring talks that have a great impact on a lot of lives and can positively change your perspective on life. The talks include Simon Sinek's How Great Leaders Inspire Action, Richard Branson's Life at 30,000 Feet, Jonathan Harris's The Art of Collecting Stories, Daniel Kahneman, The Riddle of Experience versus Memory, Susan Cain, The Power of Introverts, Malcolm Gladwell's What Can We Learn from Spaghetti Sauce, Graham Hill's Less Stuff, More Happiness, Steve Johnson's Where Good Ideas Come From, Matthew Ricard's Habits of Happiness, and Rachel Botsman's The Case for Collaborative Consumption. I've watched all 10 of these videos, and they're very powerful, and the messages are very clear. And as a result of this, I suggest you check out these 10 videos and all of the fantastic videos that TED.com shares, all for free, to inspire yourself, and there are great videos that you can use in your classroom to inspire your students. So check out TED.com. And that's my EdTech recommendation. And now it's time for everybody's favorite segment, the House of EdTech VIP. This episode's VIP, or should I say VIPs, are Sam Patterson and Waka Patu. Sam Patterson is a graduate of the University of Illinois with a degree in English. He also has his Master of Fine Arts in Poetry from San Diego State University. And Sam has a Doctorate of Literacy Education from the University of San Diego. Sam is a fantastic connected educator. From puppets to podcasts, he is always trying something new and creating resources for others. Sam believes that learning happens in a safe, fun, and well-supported environment, and that space is built between people. It is not about the tech, but the tech sure is cool. I agree, Sam. His specialties include applied technology in education, hybrid class structure, flipped class learning, writing college application essays, peer response protocols, technology and web-based instruction, augmented reality lessons, as well as video podcasting. you all definitely need to connect with Sam. His Twitter is sampatue, Patue. His website is mypaperlessclassroom.com, and you can check out his awesome EduPuppets videos on YouTube, youtube.com/theedupuppets, the EDU puppets, and there will be links to all of these in the show notes. So congratulations to Sam, this episode's House of EdTech VIP. And I can't forget, Waka, you're also a VIP too. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the House of EdTech podcast. I am Christopher Nessie. You can keep the conversation going, and I hope that you do, by visiting the website, mr.chrisnessie.com. You can check out the show notes for this episode at mr.chrisnessie.com/2014/05/houseofedtech11.html. If you have questions or comments, I would love and welcome your feedback. Leave a comment on the show notes for this episode. Click the SpeakPipe button on my website, or you can call the House of EdTech listener hotline at 732-903-4869. You can also use the new email address for the show, feedback@chrisnessie.com. I'll still answer the old email, but I'd like to get everybody using this new one. You can also send a tweet. I am Mr. Nessie, no spaces, MRNESI on Twitter, and use the hashtag House of EdTech. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review the podcast on iTunes. Your 5-star rating and positive review will help keep the House of EdTech front and center for others to discover and enjoy. Be sure to come back to the house for the next episode, which I'll be releasing on June 2nd, 2014. Boy, the school year is just flying by. Thanks for listening, everybody. And remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.